Hey, Gut Plus Science listeners. Today we're doing something just a little different. I got an experience to be a guest on the Lead the People podcast with Matt Pepsel. He is the godfather of talent optimization for the predictive index. And if you're anything like me, tools that help us uncover deeper understanding of ourselves and those around us, man, I love that stuff. And predictive index, they are so good at that. And they really niche in making the talent optimization of this world go round. Well, I got to join Matt and we talked about intention in how we lead. And I got to share one of my favorite efforts that we've done at People Forward Network, which is our culture code. That is the way we show up at work. And I talked a lot about how I am rooted in intention, like in everything I do, almost to a fault. But it was fun to break it down and talk about it. And we also talked about my love of English Bulldogs. Anybody else an English Bulldog fan? You'll get to hear a little bit about mine. All right. I hope you enjoy this. And if you do, go follow the show, Lead the People. It's awesome.
It's time to Lead the People, the show for aspiring leaders at every level. If you want to boost your self-confidence, get noticed, and maximize your impact by leading others, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Matt Pepsel. Ready to lead? Follow me. My very special guest believes the workplace is a mission field to use our strengths and maximize our lives and to serve. Her passion is devoted to employee engagement and employee experience. She believes that CEOs and leaders at all levels are the catalyst to drive workplace change for the better. She is the CEO and Chief Meaningful Work Officer of People Forward Network. She is Nikki Lewallen. Gregory, welcome to the show, Nikki.
Thank you, Matt. I feel like we've been a long time coming. We're here, and I'm really excited about this conversation with you.
We're finally here. And before I begin, I just want to say congratulations on your recent milestone announcement. 3 years, 12 team members, 16 podcasts, and more than 1.3 million podcast listens across the network. That is incredible.
Yay. Thank you so much. And guess what? We just got these numbers the other day. And I said, hey guys, at some point, this critical mass thing that you read about and you see about is really going to happen. And since then, our report this week is 1.6.
Whoa.
And I know you're part of that with the show now. So it's like we're all growing together, locked arms, like, let's go. So thank you. You're part of that growth and excited about it.
And we're excited to be here. And you're building so much momentum. And you had mentioned that we are working together, and something that's always been that I've been impressed by when I'm talking to you, is just about how intentional you are. When you think about the level of intentionality that you have, for example, I just wondered, have you always, like from day one, been that intentional, or somewhere along the way, did you decide to become more intentional?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I will say, I have a coach that works on helping her clients love themselves. She just really has this passion for that. And she's really helped me and to recognize like the things that I appreciate about in myself and to celebrate those. And so I'm going to take a moment right there and say like, yes, like I do feel like I live with intention. I always have. It's just gotten sharpened over time. I think that I watched my parents and family do that. And then when I got my first coach, got out my checkbook by myself and wrote a check to a coach for public speaking training when I was 26. And he's still my coach. He's now my husband's coach. And many people I know really has changed my life. But the root of all of that coaching was to start with why. Like a lot of Simon Sinek's work is why. Otherwise, if it's not founded in the why we're here, then we are not going to sustain, not going to keep doing it. And so it's like the question I ask every team member before hiring them or regular check-ins is like, what is the why now? Because that can change over time, but we have to be rooted in the why. And that's like big picture. But then you think of a meeting and you have 30 minutes. What are we here to do with this precious 30 minutes that we never get back?
I love that. I love that because oftentimes when I'm thinking about the why, as you mentioned it, it's sometimes you think about it at the individual level, like what's my personal why? You think about it at the team level, like as a charter, for example, what are we here to do as a group? And even as you mentioned at the organizational level, I haven't thought about it nearly as much in the day-to-day, like this specific meeting, let's be intentional. Like there's never an opportunity to not be intentional. Otherwise, what we know what we're going to get.
Mm-hmm. I will give you a little tip on something that we have made part of our culture at People Forward Network, and a lot of my friends as well, is what are we doing that's checking the box versus making an impact? And you think of how many things, not to call out our government and many policies, but many of those, it's like, but why? Why are we doing it this way? We could shortcut three steps here. So what are you doing that's checking the box? Yep, we've just always done it this way, versus what is it here to do? And rethinking it and re-engineering or engineering the how we do it.
Yeah, and it's almost like all the changes that we have been through in the last couple of years and that are still going through are kind of an opportunity to reevaluate some of the things that we've always done. It's almost like it's more dangerous when we get into the day to day, the lull of, business as usual. You're like, that's actually the scary part because then we might just be checking those boxes, as you pointed out.
That's right. Yep. And I'll just, for anyone listening right now, at whatever level of leadership you are, or aspiring leader, if you are a zombie in life right now, like, man, it's just kind of
Mm.
autopilot, just going through it, just doing the things. Life goes so fast, and we all can see at seasons in our life where we're like, how is this year already at this point? Like, I feel like it was just the holidays, and it just gets faster as you get older, and you have to be present with, like, you only get this one shot. Some people will say, but we're going to come back at another shot. Well, I don't know what it is, but I'm saying this life we have right now, we only get this one shot. And if you need to put a sticky note in front of everywhere you go to remind yourself of that, it will be a great gift to you.
I love how those 2 things fit together, right? That appreciation for the moment, that time is limited, right? But also then using that as a reason why we wanna be so intentional. And you mentioned a little bit earlier about your culture. And your website, Nikki, when you talk about People Forward Network, you talk about a culture code. And I wonder if you might tell us, what is a culture code, and how have you found it really supporting your interest in building your business and serving your team members and all that good stuff?
Yeah. Well, thank you for asking about this, because when someone says, what is the most proud thing that you've done in your leadership journey? This is what I talk about. Our culture code is the actions and behaviors that our team commits to do together and to hold each other accountable to those. So, opposite is the check the box of, yep, we have a mission statement and we have values. I don't where are those again? Like, are they're on the wall somewhere. Let me go check those real quick, or let me go look at the website. And it's like, but why do you have them then? Like, if you don't even know them. And I think that the reality of that is so true that it happens more often than not. And so what we have done is we took our core values, which are super intentional, and we have this very strong mission to help all people experience meaningful work, which is a super intentional mission for all people to think like, I spend the most of my hours working, so why wouldn't I make sure that what I'm doing when I'm spending all those hours is like my best use of self? So mission, and your vision, and then you've got your values, but then your lived way of being is what I would call a culture code. And I learned this a couple different companies I was so inspired by. They called it like their cultural laws. One of it was like the team's agreement or something, right? It's this blueprint for like how we show up. So I don't know if you want me to walk through them really quickly, just to give it a quick example.
That'd be great.
Okay. So one of my team members actually said, let's make it an acronym so it'll be easier to remember. I was like, oh, that's so good. So it spells out leadership, because we had this creative person on our team that made it work that way. And by design, the number one, the L that kicks it off is live work life integration. So people on my team, if you said, why do you like working here? Like, what's so great about it? They're like, the flexibility, the fact that I can just own my role and I design my days and my weeks. And yes, there's guidance and leadership and coaching, but work life integration is so important, because one piece of the pie is our work. We have all these other things, and it's a huge piece, but we have to have that. I don't love the word balance, but you get what I'm saying, in being able to be all the hats that we have. So work life integration, embrace failure, ask for help, design efficient solutions that scale, engage in work results versus time spent on work, require hell yes decisions or we say no, serve the greater good, have fun and celebrate successes, improve ourselves, and pursue excellence, not perfection. And so you can see in some of those, probably, Matt, that the reason for the statement is to work against the grain of what the old way was, to unlearn, but things have to be perfect before we even submit them. No. We are going for excellent, and excellent every day could be different, but I'm giving it my best, and I'm going to get it out there, and I'm going to iterate on that as an example.
I think a lot of leaders make the mistake of thinking we have to focus on the results first, and then with whatever we have left over, we'll get around to the people parts. And when you have a brand like yours of people forward network, and people are just it's just dripping off of your values and your culture code, it's like you put people first, and then the results. They I don't want to say they take care of themselves. They don't, but they do come. And so I'm really impressed with again the intentionality I asked you in the top, really showing up and sort of saying we have to be a people forward network and we have to put people first in our core values this way.
Mhm. I just thought about something that ties this together. Why do we say people forward? Well, there is an important story behind this. I love the people first way of showing up, the mentality of people first. I love that. What I have seen is it is a talk track, it is sometimes overused. I love it. People forward is the outcome. We did the work. We are moving people forward through the mentality and the way of showing up. And that is where the name comes from.
Wow. Yeah, I love that it's got motion to it, right?
Mhm.
People first, then what? And it's like people forward. Oh, we're moving forward. We're moving our businesses forward and our people forward all at the same time. And you can. I think that's my favorite thing about this podcast is the fact that we talk so much about how to do exactly that. You know, how we can lead the people in order to, drive the business forward. But I want to pick up on something that you said, Nikki, which was around, talk. Basically, it's easier said sometimes to talk about culture. And you've had the chance to bring on team members in a very intentional way. I wonder what you might observe for our listeners who might be thinking, my company has values. We've got them on the mugs and we got them on the walls, but we don't necessarily live them. What are some things that can go wrong if we hire somebody into an environment where it looked like we had a pretty definitive, intentional culture, but when you got here, it turned out not to be the case?
I'm thinking of that on two sides. So one side is for the person that we hired that we thought was the right fit for the culture, but then we started to see pretty clearly, like, no, this is not aligned. Um, it's really important to jump on that quickly and help that person get on their way somewhere else if the culture is not aligned. There's this saying, hire slow, fire fast, and sounds pretty sharp, but it's really true. In that side of like, we thought this was the right fit. At the end of the day, that person is also going to benefit from you walking them not only out the door, but helping them to get to their next place that's a good fit. I think that's so crucial and something that is a people forward leader is it's not like no matter what it is, we're humans, right? And it's like, how do I do this with love and with intention to get them to the next place? The other side of this is from a person joining and coming into a company that says we are this, but it's not that for that new hire. And well, let's just be real, if that new hire feels that, so do a lot of people that work there. They're like, but we say this, but we don't do that. It's critical that we show up and walk the the writing on the wall that we're
Mhm.
saying. And how to do that, you know, probably a lot harder said than done, if you will, is we have to be accountable to when we took the role as a leader. It was that pay raise or that title or that whatever it was. What trumps all of that is you took the oath that said, I'm here to lead people, like that, to lead people. I have a responsibility. And therefore, the first thing is like self awareness and accountability. Am I doing that? Or am I sitting in the seat that's like, I'm chill now and I whatever because I'm getting the pay that I want and I have the title that I want. That is often the story that I do see, and it's like, but it's actually a lot of work to regularly be that leader that is held accountable, and we have to walk that out and live that out. And I think the people that see this is not what we say we are have to speak up, and those leaders have to be willing to go on the chopping block, if you will, and say like, I am going, because that's what I'm here to do as a leader. So I'm calling out anybody that's listening right now and they're resting on their laurels a little bit with being held accountable to being the leader in the company that they say they are, because you took an oath when you took the role, even if you didn't sign the document.
Yeah, I think I see a lot of times that whenever something happens in the business, maybe there's been a change, maybe the numbers are a little soft, maybe a product launch is delayed, whatever it might be. it can pull us away from being people centric toward whatever the technical tactical fire might be. So if we've got enough of a culture of safety, if we've got people related things in our culture as you do, it's easier to call time out and say, hey, wait a second, let's go back to our values here. Are we really still honoring these things? We're now, this is going to be the third weekend in a row we're supposed to be coming in to do work because the product was late. Is that really the kind of work life integration, whatever it might be, right? So I think that's where being able to see something, say something kind of equivalent when it comes to cultural violations, it really does depend on intentionality. What are we all about? But then also safety. When we see something, how do we assume that the greatest intent of saying we want to make sure our culture stays sound, even while we navigate some near term challenges?
Yeah, that's right. I actually have a front row seat to a company of a very close person in my life that has allowed the bleeding of the toxicity to just keep going, and ugh, the where it's at right now is awful. I mean, because of the just letting this go, then we just let this go and we let this go, and the experience and the greatest talent that they had. I mean, I think there's one left that I know that's like the top producer, like
Mm.
great culture fits there, like everybody's left. And so that's what might happen, or probably will happen if we let it go. The other thing is I think there's a lesson to be learned on when it comes to thinking through like how do we transform and really be that if we haven't been or I'm being held accountable. If you think of like today's models of accountability in our consumer tools like Uber. So we're in a car and we, have great experience or not, and we're asked to leave a review for all to see that helps that driver to continue to be better and for us to feel like we're safe when we're in the car, but it creates this culture of like transparency, right? And it helps us all get better. I think, how do you apply that in your business where the key lessons here are things are exposed and shared and there's a spotlight on the things that we need to change? How do we do that? And how do we get more people involved in speaking up to be able to know like how are we really doing? I think there's something there, and revisiting it regularly. If it's like, yep, we once a year, right before the holidays, we go through and we kind of look at all this stuff and kind of see where we're at and create a new plan that goes on the shelf, right? Or in the documents that we never look at online. Regularity and consistency of revisiting and being transparent, it's really important, critical for it to work.
Here's one of the things I learned early on when it comes to leadership. The best leaders know how to build trust and motivate their people. And there are two ways you can do this. The first is to spend a whole bunch of time you don't have fumbling around and trying to figure out what makes the people around you tick. I wouldn't recommend that approach. The better technique is to use readily available tools to fast forward the insights you need so you can spend more time leading and less time playing guessing games. One of my favorite people first tools comes from the Predictive Index. The Predictive Index, affectionately known as PI, makes it easy to understand what each individual on your team needs out of a manager so you can personalize your leadership approach to get the best results. I can tell you with 100% certainty that the PI tools work for me and they'll work for you too. I was first introduced to the Predictive Index way back in 2007, and it changed my leadership. 10 years ago, I joined the company, and I've been proud to contribute to the development of talent optimization and the PI tools that make it possible in organizations of all shapes and sizes. Using PI, you can coach, motivate, and develop each of your direct reports on their terms so you can move up in your career with less stress. Visit predictiveindex.com to learn more. To make it even easier for you, I'll put a link in the show notes. And now, let's get back to the show. Transparency is one of those things that has really changed over time. I think now, if you brought up the consumer example of I'm in the back of an Uber and I can leave a review for the world to see, the same is true on product sites, like if with e-commerce sites with reviews. If the product didn't work for you, you say it. But when we go to our organizations, we don't necessarily have the same level of transparency. You don't put in reviews of your timekeeping tool or your payroll system or your employee experience there, or even your manager and their capability to be managers. In most organizations, you don't have that level of transparency. But it sparked a thought for me, which is that there are expectations modern workers have that executives are aware of. They know that they want to modernize their organizations, their cultures in ways that we're talking about. But I see also sometimes they're conflicted. What got them to where they are was in a very different frame. and they're a little bit hesitant sometimes to let go. So one of your values, for example, about focusing on results versus time to produce those results, if you're an executive and you're like, I worked 80 hours a week to get to where I am, what do you mean we're going to allow people to have, 40-hour work weeks and still pay them, twice what I was making when I was where they are? So my question here, Nikki, is what advice would you have for these executives who are, I'll have a little empathy here and say that they're nervous about adopting some of these people forward practices we've been talking about.
Mhm. And I also want to lean into that empathy for a minute because I think sometimes I come off as like, I'm so passionate about being the change we want to see, if you will. It's like we have to lead it forward. So we have to be held accountable. And sometimes I come off like, this it almost feels like this is the way to do it and blueprint. And it's like there's wiggle room for failure. We all do, right? And it's part of our culture code. So I am empathetic that changing 30 years in and having to do that is hard. I mean, a tech change and all the way that we do things on the back end, it's so hard. It is. And I do empathize. And so I just wanted to note that it's a journey, it's a step-by-step thing. We're not going to climb the whole staircase. So thank you for saying that. When you're sharing, I was starting to think of the change has to be because of the vast changes that technology is making in the world. It's going so fast. You ever get to this place where it's like, I just need to go out in the woods for a second, where it feels like time slows down because it's going so fast and we have to move faster because it's going to take over. It's like the reality. Also, with that, has brought new generations that are so different in how they expect the workplace to be and what they're looking for and how they win. And we cannot go to, oh well, they're just entitled and think that they are owed these things and whatever. And that's not how it was when I was. I get that because sometimes I'm like, gosh, I wish I was coming out of college like that. Actually, kind of celebrating it for the next generation. And we have to meet in the middle on this. And the one of the parts that I was talking with someone on my podcast recently about Gen Z and her greatest understanding or takeaway. And she said, I think people need to know that they don't have to work for us anymore. They don't have to do it that way. There's so many options where they just go and create their own way. Like, for example, Amazon. There's an option for you to become an Amazon influencer with all of your favorite things. And who doesn't use Amazon, right? And it tells you step by step how to do it. You don't go to work for Amazon, you create your own thing and get paid from the outcomes of Amazon. And almost the whole world is going that way. So there's two options for this Gen Z from what she was saying. The main message was they don't have to go to work for you or us. And they can go the traditional path and go get a W-2 job, or they go to this other way. So we have to change and build an attractive and meet in the middle. It's not like we just completely change everything just for them. We meet in the middle to create these workplaces that help them thrive and meet them where they are. And I think a lot of that is just listening. You got to learn and understand their come from, you know?
It's so true, and I'll bring some of these threads together. I was in an Uber one time, and I was asking what the driver's experience was like, and he said, "Well, I do this part time, and then I buy cars and I fix them up and I flip those, and then I do this other thing on the side." I said, "Man, you never had a traditional job?" He goes, "Oh, I had one. I tried corporate. I didn't like it." I'm like, "You tried corporate? Not even I tried working at one company." He's like, "I tried corporate, period." And he's like, "It wasn't a real good fit for me." And I thought, that's because you didn't have a manager who was interested in helping you identify your strengths and put them to work and develop your career, because he wasn't 100% happy even with what he was doing. So the point being that I'm with you 1,000%. It's a whole different world of work today. And I think that a people forward approach, in my view, is the only competitive advantage left.
Mm.
So I'm really, really thrilled with what you're doing. And it kind of leads me to one of my last questions for you, which is simply, when you think about the future of People Forward Network, with all the intentionality you've had, you've put up great milestones. When you look to the future, though, Nikki, what's got you most excited?
Mm. So we have a lot of exciting things coming, but I'm going to pick one to share that probably takes the very top. I spent about 14 years in a past life building communities in lots of cities with B2B networking environments. And I got really burnt out. I learned a lot of things and I met a lot of people that I cherish and are still in my life. But man, I did a lot of things wrong, as we all do, like fail forward, right? You learn. And so I took a break from a lot of the traditional community building efforts, even though it's in my blood to be a connector and to help people see ways that they can collaborate. I haven't formally done the community building thing in a while, even though most people would be like, People Forward Network, that's a community. Yes, but I want to get back to having a place that we bring people and we are the orchestrators of helping them to build those right relationships based on okay, hey, I'm in HR and I'd really love to meet other sharp HR people in my in my industry or size or seasonality, and so if you think of all the segments that bring us together, the learnings that we're looking for like peer-to-peer exchanges, or what's happening in this industry or what's happening in this seat like title area, future of work stuff, right? So we are building a community that will be highly vetted leaders that we are going to invite in, not from anything other than I really want to do this right and have the people that are putting the work in rather than people that aren't.
Mhm.
And so we're building out this community to really build relationships and grow together. And the tech side of this, as anything when you're building tech, it's like, yeah, it's gonna be ready this summer. It's like, yeah, it might be ready by the holidays. There's so much to build because we also keep seeing from an intentionality standpoint all the things that we want in this. And I'm like, this will not go live till it's a hell yes. Back to our culture code. So I'm so excited about it and more to come. Like we'll be working on this together, Matt, and all that you're doing with Lead the People and Predictive Index. So
I love
stay
it.
tuned.
I can't wait, Nikki. It's going to be amazing. I'll give us a little bit of a hard shift here. We talked a little bit earlier about authenticity and intentionality, and I've been doing the podcast for a long time. And I had realized there was something missing. There wasn't a little bit of levity. I like to have some fun sometimes. So I thought we could play a quick game. I call this one, this is a segment I call, Are We Smarter Than AI? So I'm going to have AI ask us a trivia question. Let's see how we do.
Oh
And
boy.
don't know the answer, of course. And this trivia question is going to be about English bulldogs, something I think you know a thing or two about. We're going to see how we do here. So here's the question. English bulldogs are known for their adorable wrinkles, but these wrinkles require special care to prevent infections. Is that true or false, Nikki?
That is true. And
We
my
got it.
my pocketbook will tell you that that is very true.
Really? I didn't realize it was that big of a deal. I kind of figured the case. Turns out that it's absolutely right. How much experience do you have with English bulldogs? Quite a bit.
Yeah, I teach them to skateboard. So,
Whoa.
yeah, I it is English bulldogs. When you said that, I was like, I did not know this is gonna be trivia, but I'm like, this is one of my favorite things on the planet. I have my second one. Uh,
Oh,
my first one, the average lifespan of an English bulldog is the shortest. Great Danes and English bulldogs are the shortest, 8 to 10 years average. My first one, Tonka Jane. She was a skateboarder and she lived till she was 13.
wow.
And then we just got our new English bulldog. Her name is Cardi G, Gregory, and she is wild. She's so different, but she's not picking up the skateboard just yet. She just had her first swim at the lake last weekend, so we're like, maybe she'll be an incredible swimmer or something. Maybe she'll ski. I don't know.
You
So
never know. You're gonna do it with intention, whatever it is. She's part of your family. Holy cow. I love it. Well, Nikki, I'm going to ask you my easiest question of all. Where can my listeners go to learn more about you and about People Forward Network?
yeah, LinkedIn is where I am most active online. I would say LinkedIn is the best. And then if we want to take it to email or whatever from there, I'd also like to see your LinkedIn profile and learn more about you. So reach out. Feel free also to visit peopleforwardnetwork.com. You will see Lead the People is featured on there and many other great shows. And if you see any opportunities that you'd like to pitch our way, just shoot us a note on the website. We'd love to connect.
I love it. Listeners, I'm going to have those links for you in the show notes. So you're only one click away from connecting with Nikki and with People Forward Network. Nikki, thanks so much for spending some time with me today. I really enjoyed it.
Me too. Thanks, Matt.
Here are my forward facing top 3 takeaways from today's episode. 1. Keep everything in focus. We've long been told to start with why, but are we asking this question often enough? Old habits, long standing meetings, and workplace routines can always be put to the why test. 2. Know your code. I love how Nikki described her organization's culture code as a lived way of being. This really underscores just how meaningful their intentions are to how they operate and hold one another accountable. 3. Leaders take an oath. Leadership means being responsible for the welfare of others. This should not be taken lightly. Do the work to learn the craft and push through your own boundaries to do it well. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Strong reviews help shows like mine get noticed. And be sure to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss your next opportunity to learn, lead, and live at your best. Thanks for making this investment your leadership ability. And thanks for sharing this podcast with another aspiring leader who needs to hear it. All right, leaders, until next time, don't just manage the business when you can lead the people.